Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Neka. Welcome to our new series of community conversations. We are centering the Black perspective on redefining Black futures. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe for notifications. If you've already subscribed, we genuinely appreciate you. So listen, I need your help. We have some phenomenal folks with us, so please share the videos with the Oakland community and anyone concerned about what's happening in Oakland. Now let's get into the video.
For a young Black kid coming out of either high school or even coming out of college, would you, based on your experiences, would you recommend that they go into the tech world, or you know, try to get a role in big tech, the Apples, the Googles, the Facebooks of the world?
Yeah, so racism is everywhere. Racism, I experience it when I go into the bank. When I go into the grocery store, certain people follow me, or department store. We can't run from it. So quick answer is yes, I wouldn't discourage them from going into the space. I think if they want to go into the space, they need to understand what they're getting into.
Signing up for it.
They need to also, we need to have something to help them prepare for what they're going to experience and how to thrive in that space and how to remain strong emotionally and how to be ready to deal with job instability in that space, because it's very likely. And in addition to that, I think that we also ought to encourage them to become competitors with these companies. And what I mean by that is becoming entrepreneurs. Remember, these tech companies were started by people who were in college, who some of them didn't even finish college, right? They went into a place in Silicon Valley called the Hacker Dojo. You ever heard of that? Hacker Dojo. It's a place in Silicon Valley where a lot of tech people go to work together. They're up all night, drinking milk, eating food, and they're creating ideas, innovations, and business. It's a tech space hub. And before you know it, they come out of there and they're founding Google and all these different tech companies, alphabet companies. So we need to create something like that, or even better than that. We need think tanks. We need to encourage our young people to understand that, yes, it's good. It's worthwhile to seek a career with an alphabet company or a bank or even in the medical profession. But hey, Meharry Medical School was founded. Morehouse School of Medicine was founded, right? To
Howard
educate.
Hospital.
Right. We got all these institutions that were founded that had Black people, people of color in mind. We can found some companies as well, just like we started Summit Learning Institute, just like you are a published author and you've started some organizations. We need to help the young people know that there's more than one way to move in tech, either as an employee or as an entrepreneur.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is an issue. Dr. Khalid, I want to go back to what you mentioned about the racial battle fatigue and the effects that it has on those of us who experience it. There's a reason why the Centers for Disease Control has prioritized these 5 areas that are considered social detriments of health. One of them is racism and discrimination. So what we know is that it has a profound impact on our health. And the question that, what I hope will come, it's not even a question, what I hope will come out of these conversations and people having access to these conversations is an opportunity for them to listen to people like you and to listen to these collective conversations, and that it'll spark something to where we go from acknowledgement of this is having an impact on me. This is having an impact on our community. What are we going to do? Going back to the quote, insanity it's doing the same thing over and over again and thinking you're going to get different results, doing something thinking that that we're going to have a different outcome. We have enough historical context to know what has worked for us. And I think what Dr. Harrison is mentioning is really just us drawing up on what worked before. Now I'm coming down your lane, Dr. Khalid, teaching African American history. We know that they have existed before, and there's also this inherent fear though, right, that if we do it, what might happen if we recreate that? Mm-hmm. But the question then becomes, do we allow fear to paralyze us, or do we allow systemic racism to kill us?
Now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place either way, right? Whichever decision that you choose. I do think that in terms of understanding and knowing history, right, we have those examples to lean on. Yeah. Most of us don't know that, or we only know that Black Wall Street, the one in Tulsa at least, right, was bombed and burned down, et cetera, right? For whatever, for various reasons that it happened. But more importantly was the fact that it was created, and look yes. at the success that they had prior to the, right. So in a similar sense, that's Google, right? Or that's an example of a Facebook before tech, before we talk about tech, or before tech existed, that was the tech boom, or that was the, that was Bank of America, or that was whatever, big Fortune 500 company. Like we had those established. So the erasure of history, or the banning of books and banning of that knowledge, also plays into this inherent fear, or this idea that it can't be done, we can't create it, we have never created. But that's the furthest thing from the truth. Wow. So yes. That's my 2 cents on adding to that point yes. that you just made.
Well, since we're rolling with the conversation, I'll just ask you the next question that I actually have for you, which is, what steps do you believe colleges and universities need to take to strengthen career pipelines and pathways for underrepresented college students and faculty? Let's add faculty in there as well.
Well, I think when we're talking about pipelines and pathways, we're really talking about workforce development. The California community colleges where I happen to work is a huge workforce engine of California. And there's no two ways about that engine should include people of color and African American people specifically, right? So I'm a big proponent of that, of that, reframing it from maybe a pipeline to an actual workforce development. Part of that workforce development is giving you skills and knowledge and the tools that you need in order to go from entry level to mid-level, so forth and so on, right? To climb up the ladder. But I think specifically for people of color and for Black people specifically, and generally for people of color, but for Black people specifically, there has to be some level of social, emotional support in terms of workforce development, because we understand that, as you were just mentioning earlier, the social determinant of racism, race and racism, and the effects of that are cancerous, and we deal with it subtly, covertly, overtly, directly, indirectly, in terms of the water in Flint, in terms of the housing in Hunters Point, or whatever the case may be, right? You will deal with racism or engineering of race and racism, and the health issues that come up a part of that, just by nature of you being Black or being around areas where Black people are. So whether that's in the Bay Area or whether that's in LA or whatever the case may be, in California, that workforce development for Black people specifically has to include a level of social and emotional support, or mental and emotional health support and wellness, because we're dealing with so much untreated mental and emotional trauma that's been passed down. We're dealing with so much health and wellness trauma that has also been passed down. That's part of in the soil and in the air we breathe in a lot of cases. And I don't think that workforces acknowledge that or understand that, you know, we're supposed to just work, work, work and forget about it and get over it and that type of thing. But for Black people especially, I don't think there's no way of just getting over it or getting around it. You may have some outliers who overcome these things and make it up the top of the ladder. Cool. Yes, we have some examples of that. But as a group, as a whole, most of us aren't those outliers. We have the ability to be a group of outliers, but we need some group support. So I think that in terms of dealing with race, racism, racial battle fatigue, and those types of things, the workforce development has to, for us, include a certain level of group support, mental health, mental and emotional wellness support, and then I guess support groups and therapy and that type of thing become a part of that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Khalid, because one of our Black scholars, Marimba Ani, coined this term called rhetorical ethics. And when our young people move from the high school space into these workplaces, they're going to complete diversity training. They're going to complete trainings around harassment training. And they're going to believe that the company actually walks the talk. But what helps to add to the emotional distress, what contributes to that, is when they finish the training and then when they experience racism, microaggressions being passed up on promotions, the company doesn't do what it said it endorses. And that can make you confusing, angry. That can add to your distress when you're saying, but they said this, but this is what they're doing to me. How do I know? Because I experienced it too. Just want to throw that out there.
Great point. I've experienced it as well. What's said and what's done oftentimes are as different as night and day in this corporate plantation type of system, right? What we say and what we do are two completely different things. Even when you have leadership of color, or even when you have Black leadership, it's still that corporate model, and it's still that corporate mentality and that plantation mentality. I've experienced it myself. And so, yeah, there's going to be some confusion and some, is it me? Am I just imagining this? Or is this real? Or, you know, and so that plays on your psyche, plays on your mental and your emotional wellness and sense of self, your self-assuredness, all that type of stuff. So I've been there. I'm still dealing with it, but that's why I say that the emotional and the mental, emotional, the social support becomes very important for us as we navigate career, because it's not just as simple as going to work and coming home for us, unfortunately. There's so much more that goes into it. There's so much more that we experience on a day-to-day basis. You could just be walking to get your food out of the refrigerator, or you could be walking to the cafeteria or what have you, and something could happen that turns you off, throws you into something, you know, that would never happen to somebody whose skin is not Black.
Yeah.
Or whose first name is not Askia, right? Or whose first name is not Khalid or something like that, right? Or Jamal or Dewan, right? You know, even if you were to get hired as a Dewan, there's going to be some consequences by being named Dewan, right? So yes, I'm sorry to go off on a tangent.
Askia, you got any thoughts? Because look, we got to get these students ready.
Right.
They don't even know what MOOC courses are. They don't know what they're going to experience when they get there. Any thoughts? What can HR do? Is this something HR should do? Is this something we should do as a community that will not be televised? I don't know. I'm asking.
To really take a collective and concerted effort. I love how Khalid kind of posed what sounded like to me really wrap around vocational literacy and skills building services, because it's not just about the skills, even though those MOOC courses can certainly help build supplemental skills that traditional higher ed or K through 12 models aren't preparing in students. But that said, there's also the imposter syndrome, moving into a space where folks don't look like you. How are you going to feel like you could succeed? There's a lot of cognitive dissonance when they are talking the talk, but then it's not showing up culturally. So that does, it's exhausting, it's draining. That will impact your work. And then before you know it, you're on a performance plan just because there aren't the right mental wellness resources available or just support systems that, should be available. So I'd say, there are some schools, I've been in public schools up until undergrad when I transferred to USF, and then Mills College was private. And what I really observed was that private schools do have a lot more agency in terms of trying out new learning methods. Right now, I know Northeastern is took over that Mills campus, but I do see a lot of merit in implementing experiential learning courses and requirements in higher ed for you to essentially have to be in the field for maybe 2 semesters before you graduate with that degree, because now you're more thoroughly prepared for that field. But again, whether it's through MOOC courses, experiential learning, once you get in the field, there still are all those emotional layers that require additional support. And maybe it should be more normalized, or just from the get-go, when you hire a Black employee, just that's equity, right? Like, how do we build a more opportunistic environment for this individual to?
Yes.
So just being creative, open-minded, listening to different perspectives, having, our voice right now, just giving us a better seat at the table to really provide that participatory action research of, hey, this is what's going on in the front lines. So it's not just higher ups making the decisions to what could really be a solution.
Yes, yes. Thank you both. Whit, any thoughts, or do you have a question? I wanted to give you a chance to ask your question before we move to the next question.
No, I agree with everybody's feedback. I identify with a lot of issues. I thought it was really nice to hear about the social and emotional development and contribution to health and wellness. I thought that was great. I think oftentimes that we're so kind of like fixed in our own, like the next, okay, what do I have to do next? What do I have to do next? We forget that in between of that, like things are like actually emotionally being piled onto you. And it's like, it is a heavier load if you have to psychologically be like, wait, did they check my receipt because I was this? Or did they ask me to see my ID for this credit card? Because so it's just, yeah, those things does weigh on you as society weighs on you. So I thought that was great. No, so I agree with everything. But I think what Dr. Chris was kind of like alluding to is like, okay, there's a problem. Okay, what's the like, what can we do? Like the action portion of the conversation. And maybe this may not be the platform to be like, okay, let's all go out and do this right now, tomorrow. But it was really nice to hear what everybody had to say.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're circling back around to Dr. Harrison's question, because my second to final question for everyone. So this is for anyone, is how can now this is bringing it in. So I want to bring the conversation into the Black community and its allies, because there are some people who are safe to be around who don't look like us. So what can the Black community and its allies, how can the Black community and allies play a role in building these supportive systems that we're talking about to support Black faculty, students, college graduates in the Bay Area? Because one of the things another thing that came out of the study is the need for this term pathways and pipeline comes from that study, which is there is a need to create specifically those who are underrepresented, create a pipeline of some kind and a pathway for students to actually get placement, job placement. What we all know is when we get undergraduate degrees, we get a degree, that's it. We get a degree, maybe a hug from a few college professors, and then we're out there. And we have to just figure it out. And so the understanding is, okay, when we look historically at what employment has been like, you know, what this employment experience in the US has been for Black workers, perhaps there needs to be some type of intervention. So I'm going to ask the question again: how can the Black community and its allies play a role in helping to build these systems that Dr. Khalid talks about? And I completely agree with. I think we can all agree. We are going to deal with racism. Dr. Harrison said it too. We're going to deal with racism. So what can we do as a community? What role can we play in building these support systems? One person brought up freedom schools in a previous conversation, perhaps bringing that back. So I'm going to mute, and this is for anyone.
Yeah, I'll start, but I even think, Dr. Neka, you know, your research and study, like, let's bring these objective numbers to the discussion. And I know we are in a divisive environment just in our political climate right now, even, and a lot of folks just have perspectives that condition their mind, and there's a lot of racial formation in thinking, and you know, our brains are such old computers that just categorize based on identity. And how do we move away from that and into a space of objectivity, and here's the data, here's what's going on, and really bring validity to that discussion? Because as Dr. Khalid said, you know, oh, if you always bring in, you know, race into the discussion, well, that's because unfortunately race is a social construct, but now we're so far that it has real implications. So as allies, just really giving that space for validity to exist and not just pushback, and then continuing to just surface data that shows objectively what's going on, and let's have a real talk about it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
For me, I think I'll piggyback on the social and emotional development, and add that example from the owner of the cafe, who started kind of like the initiative of having open political conversation at his space, and then now he's able to fundraise over $200,000 in 24 hours. So I think starting out by creating spaces where the objective is clear, like this space is created for this purpose, and we welcome you to that space. And then as the space grow, we're going to grow together, and we're going to set agendas and goals and things to do that will benefit the original purpose of that space.
I love it. I would just like to add to what both of the great points that have been made. In terms of the ally part, I think that, from my personal opinion, one of the ways in which a person or a group of people could be and become allies is to really be able to use their privilege to open up spaces where there are no spaces, you know, previously or currently. And so I think that's one thing that allies could do. If you really want to be an ally, is really about opening up an opportunity, or in some cases is maybe about even preventing these things from happening as an ally, and using your privilege and your power and your position to keep things from happening, or to mitigate things when they do happen, or to create an open space for the needs of any underrepresented group. And so just an example, in the organization I was talking about earlier, Pipelines to Possibilities, we are individuals who have kind of been affected by, impacted by racial battle fatigue over the years in our work in higher education. So our professional development sequence of trainings talks about some of those ways in which, you may have to navigate or understand or experience, unfortunately, in higher education. And what ways can we do preventative work, and what ways can we do proactive work so we don't run into those roadblocks. But we had some allies who saw the benefit in creating a space like that for potential Black faculty and current Black faculty in our system. And they set up an environment and they took it to the top levels to be able to host a program like this. Now, unfortunately, we talked about a little earlier, sometimes the players change. And so we're having some, anyway, the leadership has changed. So we have to kind of find a different model and some different allies, perhaps. But the original group of allies opened up the space for us to be, effective in those areas. And so the allies can play a role. And then those who are most effective, most impacted, we can be our own medicine, our own best medicine, our own best kind of practitioners in a lot of cases, and equip those that are coming behind us with some tools to get around some of the hurdles that we faced early on. So it's kind of a two-part answer, but that's one of the ways that I've seen it happen in real time and in practice.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up, just providing context and an example of the ways in which allies can show up and ways in which they can contribute to the work that we are already doing. And often that simply, I agree, it means using your privilege and your position to open up space and to open up opportunities. I think another example of that is when we had the event, which I got a chance to see as well, how it can effectively work. When we had the Black Futures Redefined, the Juneteenth event, I was able to plow through the planning of that event without anyone getting in the way and preventing the event from happening. And when we did come in and use the space, they were there to serve. Other people, allies, showed up and asked, how can I serve? How can I help? And they allowed it to be a Black space. And I appreciate all of my colleagues for giving us that space and not trying to offer ideas for something that they have absolutely no context. So I think that's another example. And I, again, appreciate you saying that, because the reality is, what we're asking is for, and I've said it this way, people need to stay in their lane. They need to understand where they are, recognize when they're in spaces that belong to someone else. Dr. Harrison often says you can't come into someone else's house and tell them how to run it. And so I think that's a great example of, often, even as researchers, we or community engaged researchers, moving into community spaces, forgetting the fact that you're in somebody else's space. So understand that your place is to be in a position of learning. You're coming into the space to learn something from the people you are engaging with. So stay in that position. You have nothing to offer to the space except your presence, and just honor that and recognize it, and just know that you're showing up to serve. So thank you so much for sharing that. Dr. Harrison, we are moving to the final thought. Do you have any questions or a comment?
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking and having some conversations around the solutions. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. All right. I was in a program called Inroads. Anybody ever heard of Inroads? I was in Inroads when I was in the 12th grade. It was an internship program. I also had an internship working and I was placed at PG&E. I also had an internship at East Bay Mud. I'm a program kid, so I benefited from programs like Upward Bound, Mills College Upward Bound, Alive and Free Omega Boys Club. And I'm very grateful for these programs. TRIO programs have always been under attack. They are under attack. They are constantly threatened. The funders are always changing the rules for determining who gets funding with this new collective impact model effort, for example. It is a structured way to determine who gets funding, but one of the intent is to drain out small nonprofits and have the money only go to larger nonprofits. So I'm bringing that up. So let me just say what I want to say and get your reaction. So internships, college and career readiness systems, rites of passage programs, mentorship programs, these things are needed, but we need to build institutions so that they are not dependent on unstable and risky government funding. A lot of times these things get going and then the community loses its trust in it because somebody will pull the plug and say, yeah, I know you got the data. I know you did well, but our priorities have changed. And I think that's just a gross disregard for our children, our families, our communities who benefit from programs like this. So any thoughts on this statement about building institutions so that we can make sure that these kinds of solutions are sustainable?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. I think, as a, in settling a thing to talk about as a nonprofit and like working with the community to like engage it, the whole thing has been self-funded up till this point, and now we're at a place where do we go for grants or do we go for funding or do we create situations where we add value? And value was presented for the first time Saturday when we did a speed dating event and we brought in $4,000 to the event. So do we build in, I think it's a tough situation, but I think you will always do better if you're able to build an institution that can fund itself. I mean, that's always going to be the space to go with. But when we're talking about people who's been disenfranchised, who are unemployed, who are marginalized, where are they going to find the fund to even get started? So then, like, we're trying to crawl towards that grant process, and none of my family members have applied for a grant. So then we go elsewhere to try to do it, and they don't have. So definitely the institution, if you have the groups of people that can fund it to get to a point where money is actually being able to be made, and this is 2 years in is the first time we've ever seen any money, and we spent about 70,000. So I think it's a tough one, but yeah, institution is always ideal because you're not answering to anybody except for the ideals of that organization that you're creating. But I want to kind of piggyback on the conversation of crabs in a barrel and creating these things. And you're asking community to be involved. And we all showed up today. We showed up and we answered the call. That is, from what I've found in the last 2 years, that is the exception in a large number of cases. Oftentimes you call community to show up to things that will be the sparks of something greater, but for whatever reason, it's not, the call is not heard. So I guess that's a thought. I don't know if that's an answer, but yeah, building institution is great if you can fund it long enough for everybody to see the vision.
Wow, what I'm hearing from that is answer the call.
Yeah.
Answer the call. So I want to move into final thoughts. And I would like to give you I don't have a question. The only question I have, I don't have a directed question. The only question I have is, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share? Any final thoughts that you would like to share as we wrap up our conversation? We just got one. When institutions are built, answer the call. That is what the Black community can do. That is what the larger community can do. Dr. Khalid has written books. Askia is doing work in the community. WID is doing great work in the community. Answer the call. Support how you can. When folks show up, with books to sell and with merchandise to sell, don't try to get a discount. Pay whatever they charge for it. So what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, and hearing Dr. Chris just share about the programs, I was reflecting on some programs that really impacted me as well. And even, Black programs, amazing, but we can really lean into intersectionality as well. And that can be really powerful to even expand our communities and allyship. But, I transferring from City College of San Francisco, it's a space in community college where, it's amazing because you can go there and learn and everyone has different goals, but it is somewhat of a precarious dynamic if you're not sure about that transfer process, what it looks like. You may be first generation college graduate or aspiring. But I was part of this transfer articulation bridge program that was actually facilitated by San Francisco State. So a lot of folks were in that pipeline to SF State. I wasn't going to SF State, but I just wanted, to really be a sponge of knowledge. And that course was taught by an Indigenous professor, probably the only one I've ever had throughout my career, and brought this new lens and perspective from, let's face it, a background that has faced a ton of just injustices and historically just mistreatment. But that said, he really just showed so much belief in what we could accomplish. It wasn't even about if you can transfer. It's about when you transfer, before that seat's even warm, you're going to be getting your master's, and just like into what our potential and what we could be, and leaning into our brilliance, and whether it's Black programs or, again, folks from other backgrounds, and just creating that unity and activation. I think that's incredibly powerful, and it's something that, we need to offer more. So hopefully the funding stays accessible, because I was just thinking about my own experience there and how it helped me to even see myself getting a master's degree or excelling after transferring and not knowing how much harder the professors would be at a 4-year, things like that. But it takes a lot of support and that intersectionality and just continued spaces of activation and development.
Thank you. Anyone else? Final thoughts before Dr. Chris does the wrap up?
Well, I would think final thoughts. I want to leave with a note of encouragement that, yes, like the job market, these different industry sectors that we're trying to blaze trails in, they come with their own challenges. They're fickle sometimes. There's, especially in tech, we've been hearing these massive 2,000 and 3,000 people laid off at the same time, right? Massive sweeps and things of that sort. Budget cuts for teachers and schools. There's a lot of doom and gloom if we read just the headlines, but there's also a lot of people who are doing great work and great things, even in the midst of all this chaos, right? So I want to leave with that level of just encouragement to keep on. We really don't have a choice but to keep on, unfortunately. So if we're going to keep on, we might as well do it at the highest levels that we can. And I think that if, kind of back to our earlier conversation, if we knew a little bit more about history and looked at some of the historical examples, there are organizations locally, nationally, that have done a lot with very little, or started from very, modest and meager means. If we look at the Panthers, if you look at the Nation of Islam, if you look at, some of the Black Wall Streets that we talked about a few, minutes ago prior, like people who, started off with peanuts. Tuskegee University and George Washington Carver literally started with peanuts, right? So there are examples in our history and in our DNA that would allow us to say, hey man, we may not start with $100 million, but if we have this speed dating event like we had mentioned and we raise 4,000 to 5,000, that's a start. Look at where we can go from there. So anyhow, yes, in the Silicon Valley and in the Bay Area, money is a major factor, yes, but I think even before money, it's the motivation, it's the will, it's the understanding that, hey, we have to encourage ourselves sometimes because we can build these institutions, we can build things from the ground up. We've done it. You've seen Levi's is a great example of, you know, something that started in the Bay Area from the ground up, right? So all I'm saying is we have to be encouraged to continue to keep on in the midst of, in the face of, because there are going to be some challenges. There's going to be systemic racism and barriers. We know that racial battle fatigue is real. Can we allow that to stop us? Stay encouraged to keep running your race, and stay encouraged to keep founding and figuring out your organizations, whether it's Summit Learning, whether it's these other organizations, pipelines of possibilities, or whomever. We have to stay encouraged to keep being the fuel for ourselves.
With any final thoughts? If you don't have any, that's fine, because you left us with the comment about the institutions, which I think was so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And because that is critical. You find your tribe, absolutely. Find your tribe, because we need each other. That is how we keep each other healthy. I recorded a conversation on leadership, and I started off talking about how leaders can make people sick. Sometimes we have to start off in a way that captures the listener's attention. It's absolutely true that when we're talking about racial battle fatigue and racial trauma, there are people who are perpetrating this behavior. And so, though we know that this is real and this exists, the other side of it is the fact that we have each other, and we can become a soft place to land for each other. When we have folks starting businesses, will we show up to support those businesses? Will we buy something from the online store? Will we, give to the GoFundMe, like you just mentioned? And by the way, we need to find out the name of that cafe. So any final thoughts, Wig?
No, just really thank you for allowing me to be in space. I didn't realize this was a medicine I needed, so I appreciate the time and opportunity to enjoy with all of you. Like, I've been taking notes. I have like 4 pages of notes. So I'm gonna act in a lot of these, and just hearing things like self-assurance, just
Yeah.
an inclusive interview panel.
Yeah.
I think it fed my purpose today. Somebody else, I'm working on a script to make a short form content on crabs in a barrel. So like, just to keep hearing people talk about it, but okay, this is a shared thing that a lot of us are seeing. And if you're out in community, not only do you have to, juggle your professional life, then you have to juggle your personal life, then you have to juggle the community life, and you have to behave in a way that's like a little bit more altruistic,
Yeah.
when oftentimes the world isn't designed for that. So no, I just think this was great medicine, and I can think this would serve a lot of business owners. So I'm going to be telling some people about this, a lot of business owners, to get like affirmation, like they're on the right path. So yeah, this definitely
Yeah.
fed me. So thank
Yeah.
you. That's my final thoughts. So just thank you for that, for this space.
Thank you for showing up. So I'm going to hand it to Dr. Chris, but before I do, I just want to say thank you to all of you for answering the call, like someone said, of which you always do. You always answer. I don't know a time where, as Kia, you answered the call. You showed up in June. Dr. Khalid, this is your second time answering the call. We talked about it months ago, the fact that we needed to do something again together, and here we are. We just met in June, and this is just the start. It was the start of something, and this is not even the end. We're going to continue to encourage each other and continue to stay connected, and continue to collaborate in different ways that we can collaborate. So thank you all so much. Dr. Chris.
Dr. Khalid and I are both alums of Morehouse College. And I bring that up because today it felt like what we used to experience in the dorms 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, brothers having long, deep conversations. I know. So you helped. It felt good. It felt like a Morehouse experience today, brothers. You are brothers Wed and Askia, and I just want to say thank you. All right, so thank you, Dr. Neka, for graciously facilitating this community conversation today entitled Underrepresented and Unemployed, the Black Workforce in the Bay Area. So what have we learned and what have we heard from Wed, Askia, and Dr. Khalid today? Well, with respect to systemic barriers to employment, we've heard that stronger pipelines are needed to help Black faculty move up in K-12 and post-secondary institutions. Black faculty are positively impactful game changers in these institutions, but often experience gatekeeping blockage in these corporate structures or racial battle fatigue and trauma as employees in these spaces. HBCUs are strong pipelines in fields of education, even in California, but often go overlooked because of the regional distance and location in southern states. We got to do something about that. One recommendation is pushing the concept of cluster hire to hire multiple HBCU alums or just Black alums arriving from different institutions or Black workers to encourage cultural collegiality in the workplace. With respect to industry representation, diversity representation in tech has adversely been impacted by post-pandemic. It's important to measure and examine data on the cultural composition of racial groups and people of color in particular in the tech industry. So we need to build community in industry to the degree that all persons feel comfortable and valued. We need added representation to the job interview panels to ensure compliance with HR policies and to make sure people of color candidates have a fair chance when interviewing for jobs. And barriers to employment and matriculation in the tech space, in the medical field, even in higher ed for Black and brown individuals are noticeable in California in particular. The representation, as someone said, is about deciding who we hire, promote, and include in the workplace. Now, turning to support systems, pipelines, and pathways. Silicon Valley is completely an anti-Black space. We know that. It's very real and it's worldwide. This is a national and global epidemic and pandemic that we face. We need to create ways to overcome this reality and make sure we do not subscribe to crabs in the bucket syndrome. Now, California community colleges are a huge workforce engine for preparing people for the workplace. Yet there is a need for social-emotional support to help people of color overcome and navigate racism, microaggressions, and unfair treatment in the workplace. Massive open online courses or MOOC courses such as Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, edX, and Summit Learning Institute provide new credentials for workers in the workplace. K-12 schools are lagging in even knowing what this is and helping students obtain these credentials as high school students. When they arrive in the tech space, they are likely to be the only person of their race in meetings, eating spaces, and even just walking around on the campuses. And we need to help high school and college students who are interested in moving into these spaces build their readiness for choosing a career in these areas and or in the medical, business, workplace, post-secondary, or tech space. We need wraparound vocational skills, but we also need to help people of color thrive in the workplace while enduring exhausting and draining experiences due to treatment based on their race. In other words, we need to ensure the provision of social-emotional development. It would be helpful to offer experiential courses and learning experiences that is similar to job shadowing, apprenticeship programs, and mentorship to build readiness for the work that they're going to do in the workplace. And we need to bring objective numbers to the discussion on workforce readiness and employee experience for Black workers so that we can analyze the data and unearth strategies and solutions and set agendas and goals. We can also use our connections, our exposure, our relationships to create opportunities to address the needs of any underrepresented group. Allies can join us in doing preventative and developmental work in developing institutions, programs, tools, and services and support. When institutions are built by us and for us, we need people to answer the call. We need our people to answer the call. It's highly recommended that we build institutions that are self-funded. We need to help our community develop an ethic for making donations to grassroots community-based organizations and doing business in support of entrepreneurial endeavors created by people who look like us and who care about us. I just coined a new acronym, LLUCAU. Look like us and care about us. And lastly, it's about posterity of future generations for our communities. We can do it, and we will do it.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this series of community conversations, Black Futures Redefined. If you find any of the information in this series valuable, share it with someone else. If you're wondering, you can connect with the guests on social media by searching their names on Instagram or LinkedIn. Also, I encourage you to check out Dr. Khalid's newest book, Black Voices from the Ivory Tower, or WID on Instagram. His social media handle is a thing to talk about. If you're an entrepreneur, entertainer, or an agent of social change, you definitely want to connect with WID on Instagram. Lastly, let's stay connected. Subscribe to the channel to receive announcements and alerts about videos released in the new year. Remember, live on purpose and lead with love. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.